In Dispatch, you play as a washed-up superhero stuck working in a call center, sending dysfunctional heroes and ex-villains on missions of dubious importance. Sometimes this means you'll be saving cats from trees or stopping small robberies, and other times you'll be hacking into toilets. You know, the usual superhero stuff. Since Dispatch comes to us from some of the same developers and directors behind Telltale's Golden Age, it brings with it that same focus on characters, dialogue, and choices with long-term consequences. However, unlike Telltale's games, Dispatch is a lot more gameplay focused, as choosing which hero to send where is quite tricky to get right when you are constantly bombarded by calls. This whole thing is a very weird mix of a management sim and a narrative game, but honestly, the combination really does work. Greetings and welcome friends, I'm Ash, and Dispatch has been one of the more exciting demos I've tried in this Steam Next Fest. What initially really caught my eye was just how real the characters felt, despite being obvious caricatures of popular superhero tropes. Your main character used to be Mecha Man, Iron Man's bulkier cousin, but after a particularly nasty fight, your robot suit ended up getting trashed. And now, with no mech and no money to repair it, you are just some guy. So in a desperate attempt to fix up your armor, you take a very demeaning job at the superhero call center where your entire team thinks you're a complete loser. And yet, you have to endure the humiliation because it is the only thing you have left. With all of that in mind, what do you think the main character sounds and behaves like? If the answer is a depressed shell of a man that is completely done with everyone else's nonsense, you would be correct.
Nice meeting you, Royd, even if it was while we were both holding our dicks.
And yet, despite how awful everything is for him, there's still little moments where he forgets about his misery and lets his actual personality leak through, which really helps give him a lot of depth as a character. The same thing goes for your mentor, generic superhero lady. I'm sure she'll have a name in the actual game, but in the demo she's mostly there to show you the ropes, so she tries to go for a cool boss mom sort of vibe. But if she's ever caught off guard, she tends to default to being a lot more playful and snappy, thus showing that the whole corporate image is just that, an image.
Sorry. At work, I tend to get a little
Corny.
corporate, Dick.
She is the boss, so she has to act like one, whether she wants to or not, and again, it's a nice little detail. Another thing the writing succeeds at is creating a very believable everyday atmosphere. A lot of games tend to get lost in jargon or just endless exposition when introducing their world, but Dispatch mostly keeps things grounded by having characters talk like normal people. No super flowery language or ridiculous quirks like talking exclusively in rhymes. And yes, this does mean swears. Lots and lots of swears. And yet, in a lesser game, this would come across as crass and juvenile, but here, it really just works.
We joke, we laugh, we suppress our trauma. Alright, enough of this feeling shit. Let's introduce you to your team of losers.
Unfortunately, we don't get much one-on-one time with the crew of ragtag superheroes you're supposed to shepherd around. But from what I can tell, they seem to follow the off-brand hero, but there's a little bit more going on sort of formula. So you have characters like the drunken Irish guy that likes to get into fistfights, a bunch of dirt and mud that somehow gain sentience, a fire-themed douchebag that is a staple of literally every superhero story, an invisible girl with spiky hair and a bad attitude, and even an actual, factual demon. They are a very colorful bunch, and as you would expect from a group of arrogant rejects forced to work together, they're also constantly bickering, either amongst themselves or with you. This is probably a good time to bring up the voice acting, because it ranges from amazing to pretty good, despite the very odd casting choices. You see, instead of just sticking with veteran voice actors like Matt Mercer or Laura Bailey, Dispatch has also included a couple of popular streamers like Jacksepticeye or Moist Critical. The last few times I saw something like this happen, it was a complete and utter disaster, with both bad voice acting and terrible audio mixing. So I must admit, when I read that, I was dreading meeting the team. But you know what? I have to give credit where credit is due. Everyone actually did a pretty good job. Yeah, you can sometimes tell who the professional voice actor is with thousands of hours of experience and who isn't, but I never really found that to be too distracting.
I used to punch bums on that corner! Makes you wonder if the best days are behind us.
I think that mostly comes from the characters being so weird to begin with that adding one extra quirk on top of it doesn't really change much about them. So if this is the quality of the voice acting we'll be getting in the full version, I think I'll be quite happy, which, again, I must admit, I never expected I'd say. Now, while I absolutely adore Telltale's earlier games, especially the first season of The Walking Dead, it is very obvious that the studio was operating on a shoestring budget and that they had to cut a whole bunch of corners in order to make the very, very tight deadlines. Nowhere is this more apparent than with the visuals, because while they might have a lot of charm and they still really hold up in my memory, they can frequently look a bit rough, and especially in motion. Dispatch, while going for a similarly simple look, thankfully does not suffer from this problem. Quite the contrary, actually. Its animation style is clean, colorful, and really smooth. Whether we're talking about the dialogue sequences, the actual gameplay bits, or even the cinematics, the game has a very appealing look to it. I especially love the character designs as they are rather expressive and can show a great deal of emotion just through a couple of facial movements. It's the sort of attention to detail that I could have easily gone without in such a story-heavy game, but I am definitely glad it's here as it really helps bring this whole bizarre and weird world to life. But that's enough of me rambling about the presentation. Instead, allow me to ramble about the actual gameplay, which was a lot more involved than I expected. The way it works is that you sit in front of a giant city map and have to respond to emergency calls by sending in appropriate heroes to solve the problem. The big catch is that you aren't told what exactly is needed in each mission. You have to figure that out yourself by judging what the mission needs and by looking at the provided clues. For example, if you're sending someone to rescue a kitty cat stuck in a tree, you're probably going to need a combination of charisma and mobility. Charisma, so the hero doesn't get savaged by the cat they're saving and thus embarrasses the organization, and mobility, so they don't just decide to tear the tree down because they can't climb it. Once you've made your choice, the mission parameters will reveal themselves in full, and, provided you've managed to match them, you'll be able to add a nice little success to your resume. Since each hero only has a certain amount of points in each of the 5 stats, you'll often need to send a group in order to tackle some of the more complicated problems. This is where the gameplay gets really interesting. Not only does every single hero have a unique attribute that triggers when certain conditions are met, for example, like being alone or being the leader of a group, but each mission also takes a certain amount of time, during which the heroes will be unavailable. And since you are often bombarded by calls, this means that you won't always be able to send the perfect heroes to the perfect situation. You'll need to quickly scan what each mission requires, and then send whoever even remotely fits the bill in order to hopefully be able to help everyone on time. But wait, there's more. Sometimes the crime scene ends up being a lot more complicated than was originally stated, and so you'll also have to make a very quick judgment call on what your heroes should do. Again, you don't have any concrete information on what's the correct answer, but based on the hero's stats and their personality, you can generally suss out the correct path forward, and when you do, it really does feel good. If things require a bit more of a delicate touch, you can also directly intervene via hacking, which is first demonstrated with the most important task of them all, shutting down a rogue toilet. You hack things by moving around on a 2D map, unlocking different pathways through very simple mazes, and you do all of this by doing Helldivers-style inputs. It is barely even worth mentioning given how simple it was throughout the demo, but I can easily see it becoming more of a puzzle if additional mechanics and ideas get introduced later down the line. As it stands, the hacking is just kinda eh. When you combine all of this together, you end up with a very simple yet surprisingly captivating system. It's got enough going for it that I very quickly got sucked into the minutiae of running a call center, but without ever becoming actually tedious or annoying, since I was mostly just matching heroes to missions and watching the random nonsense happen. Perhaps the biggest piece of praise I can give is that I found myself genuinely annoyed when the demo just ended mid-mission. I get why they did this, obviously it's a good teaser, but I am still reporting the developers to the nearest superhero bureau. This injustice will not stand. Like I said at the very beginning, this patch was one of my favorite demos from the Steam Next Fest, and a game I'll be keeping a very close eye on moving forward. It really scratches that Telltale Games itch for me while also offering a unexpectedly enjoyable gameplay loop. So if you're a fan of lighthearted, narrative-driven games, I would definitely recommend you give this patch's demo a try, if it is still around. And if it isn't, at least look up the first few minutes of the intro on YouTube, it's really good stuff. Thank you guys for watching, and if you enjoyed this, or even if you didn't, please do let me know. If you'd like to see more, make sure to subscribe, hit the stupid bell, like the video, pet your favorite superhero cape, and do whatever other nonsense you gotta do these days. Thank you for sticking to the very end, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye bye!